You know the royal family owns incredible jewellery. You've heard stories about Queen Mary's collection, Queen Alexandra's treasures, the Queen Mother's favourites, but you never see them. And that's your problem. Where are they? Why don't Kate and Camilla wear them? What happened to them? Here's the truth. They're locked in a vault, forgotten. Queen Alexandra's Dagmar necklace, not worn since 1960, 64 years. Queen Mary's love trophy collar, not worn since the 1930s, 90 years. The sunray bandeau, not worn since the 1960s, 60 years. The diamond stomacher, not worn since 2002, 22 years. The Queen Mother's sapphire brooch, not worn since 1986, 39 years. Today I'm solving this problem. I'm showing you all 5 pieces, when they were last worn, why do they disappear, and why they'll probably stay hidden forever. Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going into the royal vaults, not the crown jewels in the Tower of London. Those you can see anytime you want. Buy a ticket, stand in line, there they are. No, we're talking about the private collection, the jewellery that belongs personally to the royal family, the pieces inherited from Queen Mary, from Queen Alexandra, from the Queen Mother. Over 400 pieces are stored 40 feet below Buckingham Palace, in a converted air raid shelter from World War II. And here's what nobody tells you. Most of them haven't been worn in decades. Some haven't been seen since the 1930s. Others disappeared in the 1960s. One was last worn in 1999 and hasn't appeared since. These aren't lost jewels. They're not stolen. They're sitting right there in the vault, perfectly safe, perfectly preserved, but perfectly forgotten. Today I'm going to show you 5 spectacular pieces that royalty has abandoned. You'll see what they look like, learn their stories, and discover why modern royals refuse to wear them. Let's start with the oldest mystery. Let me take you back to 1863. Princess Alexandra of Denmark is about to marry the Prince of Wales, the future King Edward VII. Her father, King Frederick VII, wants to give her something special, something Danish, something that connects her to her homeland. So he commissions a necklace. But this isn't just any necklace. At its centre is a replica of the Dagmar cross. The original dates back to 1212. It was named after Queen Dagmar of Denmark. Inside the cross, a fragment supposedly from the true cross, and silk from the grave of King Canute the Great. Now, whether those things are actually inside, nobody's ever opened it to check, but that's the story. Princess Alexandra loved this necklace. She wore it constantly. At balls, at state dinners, and most famously at her coronation in 1902 when she became Queen Alexandra. The necklace has pearls, it has diamonds, it's set in gold, very Victorian, very ornate, very spectacular. When Queen Alexandra died in 1925, the necklace passed down through the family. Eventually, Queen Elizabeth II inherited it, and she wore it. In the 1950s, you can see photographs of young Queen Elizabeth wearing this necklace. She looked beautiful in it, but then something changed. The last public appearance of the Dagmar necklace was in 1960, a film premiere in London. Queen Elizabeth wore it with a white gown, and after that night, nothing. 64 years of silence. The necklace hasn't been seen in public since. Queen Elizabeth never wore it again in her 70-year reign. Queen Camilla hasn't worn it. Kate hasn't worn it. It's never been loaned to any family member. So where is it? In the vault, wrapped in tissue paper, stored in a box, waiting. But waiting for what? That's the question. Here's what I find fascinating. This necklace has royal provenance dating back 160 years. It's historically significant. It's connected to Danish royalty. It's beautiful. And yet, modern royals won't touch it. Why? Fashion? Pure and simple. The Dagmar necklace is very Victorian. Lots of drops, lots of dangles. Very busy, very ornate. Modern royal jewellery is sleek, simple, elegant. Think of what Kate wears, clean lines, minimal fuss. The Dagmar necklace doesn't fit that aesthetic. It looks old-fashioned, it looks heavy, it looks complicated, so it stays in the vault. And here's the sad truth, it will probably stay there forever, because once a piece falls out of fashion for this long, it rarely comes back. The younger generation of royals, Kate, Sophie, Beatrice, Eugenie, they've never seen this necklace worn, so they don't think to ask for it. They don't even know it's an option. Out of sight, out of mind, and that's how royal jewellery gets forgotten. But our next piece, it was never even given a chance. In March 1901, Queen Mary, then Princess of Wales, went to Garrard Jewellers in London. She wanted a choker necklace, something spectacular, something she could wear to all the big events. Garrard created the Love Trophy collar. It's a wide choker, multiple rows of diamonds, very Edwardian, very opulent, very, look at me. Queen Mary loved it. She wore it regularly in the early 1900s. You can see it in photographs from that era. But here's where the story takes a turn. At some point in the 1930s, Queen Mary gave this necklace to her daughter-in-law, the Duchess of York, who later became Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. It was a generous gift, a spectacular piece, worth a fortune. The Queen Mother accepted it graciously, and then she never wore it. Not once, not in public anyway. We have no photographs of the Queen Mother wearing the Love Trophy collar, no records of her wearing it to any event. Nothing. Why? Nobody knows for sure. But here's my theory. The Love Trophy collar is a very Queen Mary piece. Stiff, formal, old-fashioned even by 1930s standards. The Queen Mother had a different style. She preferred softer jewellery, brooches, pearl necklaces, things that moved and flowed. A rigid diamond choker, not her thing, so the Love Trophy collar went into her jewellery box. And it stayed there for decades. When the Queen Mother died in 2002, Queen Elizabeth II inherited it along with the rest of her mother's jewellery, and Queen Elizabeth never wore it either, not once in her 70-year reign. So now we're at 90 plus years, 90 years since this necklace was last worn publicly. But here's the amazing part, it still exists. In 2012, Hugh Roberts published a book called The Queen's Diamonds. It's an official documentation of Queen Elizabeth's diamond jewellery. And there, in one of the photographs, is the Love Trophy collar laid out on black velvet, perfectly preserved. So it's not lost, it's not damaged, it's just unworn. Think about that for a moment. A spectacular diamond choker made by one of the finest jewellers in London, worth probably millions today, sitting in a vault for 90 years. Why doesn't Camilla wear it? Why doesn't Kate borrow it? Same reason as the Dagmar necklace. Fashion. Choker necklaces were huge in the Edwardian era. Queen Alexandra wore them. Queen Mary wore them. They were the style. But today, chokers feel dated. They look uncomfortable. They don't photograph well. Modern royals prefer longer necklaces, statement pieces, or simple pendants. A stiff diamond choker that sits tight around your neck. That's not what anyone wants to wear in 2025. So the Love Trophy collar stays in the vault, perfectly preserved, perfectly forgotten. And unless fashion does a complete 180-degree turn back to Edwardian styles, it's going to stay there forever. But at least we know that necklace exists. Our next piece? That's more mysterious. Now we're talking about tiara, and this one has a very interesting history. Queen Mary owned many pieces of jewellery that originally belonged to the Romanov family, the Russian royal family. After the Russian Revolution in 1917, many Romanovs fled to Europe. They were desperate. They needed money, so they sold their jewellery. Queen Mary bought several pieces. She had them reset. She had them redesigned. And one of those pieces was the sunray bandeau. It's a tiara that looks like rays of sun, diamonds arranged in a radiating pattern, Art Deco style, very 1920s. The bandeau can be worn with different centre stones, sometimes a diamond, sometimes a sapphire. You can switch them out depending on your outfit. Very versatile, very practical. Queen Mary wore it occasionally, but it was never one of her main tiaras. She had bigger, grander pieces she preferred. When Queen Mary died in 1953, the tiara passed to Queen Elizabeth II. Queen Elizabeth wore it a few times in the 1950s, but again, not frequently. She had her favourite tiaras, the Vladimir, the Girls of Great Britain, the Lover's Knot. The sunray bandeau wasn't in regular rotation, so in the 1960s, Queen Elizabeth loaned it to her sister, Princess Margaret, and Princess Margaret loved it. She wore it several times in the 1960s. We have photographs of her wearing it with the sapphire centre stone. She looked absolutely stunning. But then Princess Margaret stopped wearing it. We don't know exactly when, but by the 1970s, it had vanished from public view. And here's where it gets interesting. We haven't seen it since. That's 60 plus years. Not worn publicly for over 6 decades. When Princess Margaret died in 2002, the tiara went back to Queen Elizabeth. It didn't go to Margaret's children. Tiaras usually return to the main line. Queen Elizabeth never wore it again, not once in the remaining 20 years of her life. King Charles inherited it when his mother died in 2022. Technically, Queen Camilla now has access to it, but she hasn't worn it, not once. So where is the sunray bandeau now? In the vault, presumably. The last confirmed sighting was in 2012. It was photographed for Hugh Roberts' book, The Queen's Diamonds, so we know it still exists as of 2012. But has anyone worn it since? No, and here's what troubles me. Many jewellery experts hope it's still in the vaults. Many of us are crossing our fingers that it's still there. They say, wait, what does that mean? Why wouldn't it still be there? Because there's always a possibility that a piece was dismantled, quietly taken apart, the stones reset into something else. It happens more often than you think. Queen Mary did it all the time. Queen Elizabeth did it too. They'd take apart old pieces and create new ones. So is the sunray bandeau still intact? Or was it dismantled years ago to create something else? Nobody knows. The palace doesn't say. They don't have to disclose what they do with private jewellery. So the sunray bandeau exists in this strange limbo. Last photographed in 2012, last worn in the 1960s. That's 60 years of mystery. And this is what happens when jewellery falls out of favour. First, it stops being worn. Then it stops being documented. Then eventually, people forget it even exists. Unless someone like Queen Camilla suddenly decides to wear it, the sunray bandeau will probably stay in limbo forever. But now, let's talk about the pieces that modern royals actively avoid. Stomacher is a large piece of jewellery that you pin to the bodice of a dress. Very Victorian, very Edwardian, very formal. It's not a necklace, it's not a brooch, it's somewhere in between. A massive piece that covers your chest and makes a huge visual impact. Queen Mary loved stomachers. She wore them to coronations, to state banquets, to the most important events. One of her most spectacular pieces was the diamond stomacher. It was made of diamonds arranged in elaborate patterns. Very intricate, very heavy, very imposing. Queen Mary wore it for important occasions. There are photographs of her wearing it at coronations and other major events. When Queen Mary died in 1953, the diamond stomacher was passed down in the family. Eventually, Queen Elizabeth II inherited it. And here's where the story gets interesting. Queen Elizabeth wore it once, one time, one night, in 2002, for her Golden Jubilee dinner at Windsor Castle. It was a private dinner, not a huge public event, but photographers were there. We have pictures of Queen Elizabeth wearing the diamond stomacher pinned to her gown. She looked spectacular. The diamonds caught every light. It was a showstopper. And after that night, the stomacher vanished. That's 23 years ago. Queen Elizabeth never wore it again, not in the remaining 20 years of her reign. Queen Camilla has never worn it. Kate has never worn it. No other royal has touched it. 23 years of silence. Now, why would a piece be worn once and then never again? Here's my theory. Queen Elizabeth was making a point. The Golden Jubilee was about celebrating her 50 years as queen. It was about honouring tradition, about connecting to the past. So she wore her grandmother's diamond stomacher, a piece Queen Mary had worn, a piece that represented the old monarchy, the grand imperial monarchy. It was a tribute, a way of saying, I remember where I came from. But after that, the message was sent, the tribute was paid, and the stomacher went back into the vault. Because here's the reality, stomachers don't fit modern royal style. They're too big, too formal, too old-fashioned. When was the last time you saw Kate Middleton wear something pinned to her bodice? Never. She wears necklaces, earrings, maybe a brooch on her shoulder, but a massive piece covering her entire chest. That would look ridiculous at a modern event. Fashion has moved on. Royal protocol has relaxed. Nobody wears stomachers anymore, so the diamond stomacher sits in the vault, a relic of an earlier era. It's beautiful, it's valuable, it's historically significant, but it's also completely useless in 2025. And that's the sad truth about much of the royal jewellery collection. Beautiful pieces that nobody wants to wear. But our final piece, that one hurts the most. This is the story that breaks my heart. In 1923, Lady Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon married the Duke of York, the future King George VI. As a wedding gift, Queen Mary gave her daughter-in-law a suite of sapphire and diamond jewellery, a necklace, bracelets, and a large corsage brooch. The brooch was spectacular. sapphires and diamonds arranged in an Art Deco design, 2 pendants hanging at different lengths. Very 1920s, very stylish. And the new Duchess of York loved it. She wore it constantly. Through the 1920s and 30s, she wore it to daytime events, to the races, to garden parties. When her husband became King George VI in 1936, she became Queen Elizabeth, and the brooch came with her. She wore it during World War II. She wore it during the 1950s after her husband died. In 1956, she wore it on a visit to Paris. In the 1960s, she wore it to garden parties. In 1991, she wore it to Trooping the Colour. There's a famous photograph of her in a carriage with Princess Diana and a very young Prince Harry. The sapphire brooch is pinned to her coat. That brooch was part of the Queen Mother's signature style for nearly 80 years. 80 years. Think about that. She wore that brooch for 8 decades. It was her favourite. Everyone knew it. If you saw the Queen Mother at an event, chances were good she'd be wearing her sapphire brooch. And then in 1999, she wore it to the Earl of Wessex's wedding. Prince Edward's wedding. That was the last public appearance. The Queen Mother was 99 years old. She died 3 years later in 2002. Queen Elizabeth II inherited the brooch, along with all her mother's other jewellery. And then, nothing. 25 years. The brooch hasn't been worn publicly for 25 years. Queen Elizabeth never wore it, not once. Not in 20 years. Queen Camilla has never worn it. Not once. Kate has never borrowed it. Sophie has never borrowed it. It's sitting in the vault, unworn, forgotten. And this one really bothers me, because this wasn't just any brooch. This was the Queen Mother's favourite piece. She wore it for 80 years, through wars, through deaths, through coronations and abdications and scandals. That brooch was part of British history. And now, nobody wants it. Why? Again, fashion. Art Deco brooches with pendants don't fit modern royal style. They look old-fashioned. They look like something your grandmother would wear, which, technically, they are. Modern royals prefer simpler brooches, clean designs, classic shapes. A 1920s corsage brooch with dangly pendants. That's not on trend, so it stays in the vault. But here's what really gets me. This brooch was a favourite. The Queen Mother loved it. It was part of her identity. Don't you think there's something sad about that? Your favourite piece, the one you wore for 80 years, and then your daughter never wears it. Your granddaughters-in-law never wear it. It's like erasing a part of you. I understand fashion changes. I understand modern royals have different tastes. But still, there's something melancholy about a favourite brooch gathering dust for 25 years. The Queen Mother wore it with joy, with pride, with love, and now it's forgotten. So let's recap what we've learned today. 5 pieces of royal jewellery, all spectacular, all valuable, all forgotten. Queen Alexandra's Dagmar necklace, not worn since 1960, 64 years. Queen Mary's Love Trophy collar, not worn since the 1930s, 90 years. Queen Mary's sunray bandeau, not worn since the 1960s, 60 years. The diamond stomacher, not worn since 2002, 22 years. The Queen Mother's sapphire corsage brooch, not worn since 1999, 25 years. Do you see the pattern? These aren't lost jewels. They're not stolen. They're not damaged. They're just out of fashion. And once a piece of royal jewellery falls out of fashion, it rarely comes back. Because fashion moves forward, royal protocol changes, and modern royals pick their favourites. Everything else? It goes to the vault. There are over 400 pieces stored 40 feet below Buckingham Palace. Most of them haven't been worn in decades. Some will never be worn again. They'll sit there forever, beautiful, valuable, and completely forgotten. Is that sad? Maybe. Or maybe it's just the reality of owning 400 pieces of jewellery. You can't wear them all. But I do think there's something melancholy about the Queen Mother's sapphire brooch sitting unworn for 25 years. That was her favourite. That meant something to her. And now, it's just another piece in the vault. Fashion changes. Tastes change. And sometimes, the things that meant the most to one generation are completely forgotten by the next. That's the story of forgotten royal jewels. Now I want to hear from you. If you were Queen Camilla, which of these pieces would you bring back? The Dagmar necklace, the Love Trophy collar, the Queen Mother's sapphire brooch? And here's the big question. Do you think modern royals should make an effort to wear historical pieces, even if they're out of fashion? Or should they stick to what suits their personal style? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. If you loved this deep dive into forgotten royal jewels, you need to see what I've uncovered next. The jewels that were sold at auction, the pieces that sparked family feuds, the tiaras that queens fought over in secret. Subscribe so you don't miss these stories. Hit that notification bell, because royal jewelry history isn't just about sparkles. It's about memory. It's about loss. It's about the things we inherit and the things we forget. Until next time, keep questioning, keep wondering, and remember, just because something is valuable doesn't mean it's valued. Sometimes the most precious things are the ones gathering dust in the dark.